I want to tell you the story about how I came into this industry and how it led me to where I am today. In 2012, I was 14 and a freshman in high school, and despite being a CD student with no intention of changing that, I decided I was going to graduate high school early. But if I was going to do that, then that meant starting college early as well, and anybody who's been to school in the States can tell you that that does not come cheap. I had no money, I was too young to get a job, and my parents had limited funds to be able to help me afford it. So I did what over 100,000 other people do every single month, and I googled how to make money online. After sifting through hundreds of legitimate opportunities, I became a millionaire with this undeniable proof. I'm kidding, obviously. I ended up writing SEO content for often less than a penny a word, just trying to make a couple bucks. This is what initially introduced me to SEO and digital marketing. After a bit, I decided that finding sketchy work online was too safe, so I ended up doing gig work on Craigslist, but it kinda worked out for me. I essentially did anything I could get hired for. You need a math tutor? I gotcha. You're trying to write a book? I just so happen to know words. You need a business coach? I suppose I can fake it till I make it. And yes, at 15, I was hired to go into a stranger's house, safe, multiple times, to sit down, listen to their business ideas, and then give them my feedback on what I thought about it. Did I make a lot of money doing any of this? No, but I also wouldn't be here today if I hadn't done it. Because what I didn't understand at the time was that I was starting to develop and gain a basic understanding of skills that would be important to me from that point on. Things like communication, sales, writing for the web, and to a certain extent working with clients. I ended up starting college at 15 through a Running Start program, and by the time I was 16, I was a full-time college student. Now I'm 17, working on my marketing degree and trying to get my first real marketing job. Eventually I got to interview for a marketing position with one of the largest real estate corporations in New Hampshire, and after double checking that they could legally hire a 17-year-old, I got the job. The goal in my mind at the time was to essentially climb the corporate ladder. I finished my marketing degree a month after I turned 18, and I felt as though I was ready to take on new challenges and responsibilities at my job. But after a couple of conversations and some failed promises later, I realized that there was more than likely not a future for me at this company. So I started to explore the other interests that I had, such as programming, cybersecurity, and of course diving deeper on digital marketing. This led me to eventually sign up for a much lesser known site at the time, Upwork, in which I started offering my services for $5 an hour, doing anything that I could. I was building websites, managing social media accounts, creating marketing strategies, creating and sending marketing emails, and of course SEO. I was doing this to build my skills and portfolio, and not even so that I could start my own company. Don't get me wrong, I had an interest in owning a business, I just didn't think I'd be cut out for it, and I'm still not fully convinced either. I was building my portfolio to increase my chances of getting a more interesting job. But with no such luck there, I ended up starting my first company, Cicada Development, in which I thought the goal would be to offer web development services. But I quickly realized that while I was interested in development and programming for my own projects and building the things that I was interested in, I really didn't enjoy working with clients in this capacity, so I shut down the company within 3 months. But that wasn't too much of a big deal because quickly after shutting down that company, I got a job offer from a marketing agency to join their SEO team, so 2 weeks later, I was out of the corporate job and officially employed as an SEO. By the time I was 19, I had been promoted to the lead SEO strategist and had completely absorbed myself within the world of SEO. I was reading and watching every article and video I could come across, joining every Facebook group and forum that I could, and trying to attend every conference that I could one way or another. I would also work on a couple other freelance projects at the same time so I could play around with and implement the things that I was learning as well as my own theories that I had in ways that just wouldn't be applicable for the types of clients that we were working with at the agency. Eventually, I found a nice little niche for myself by working for 2 to 3 other agencies at a time that wanted to offer SEO services. I had the skills of the SEO to do the work, the skills of a freelancer to take charge of the projects, and the skills of being familiar with the agencies so that I could acclimate very quickly to the other agencies that I was working with. This was really great for me because I didn't have to worry about client acquisition, I just had to worry about getting better at SEO, and the clients came to me by proxy of the agencies that I was working for. Over time, I went from full-time down to part-time at the agency I was employed for, and I stopped taking on agencies as clients and just worked with businesses directly, mainly because I could charge a lot more. I'm incredibly grateful that I got to work for an agency before owning my own, because it gave me a massive jump start, and I don't know if I would have been able to make it this far if I hadn't had real tangible agency experience first. At this point, I'm 20 and I'm a full-time freelancer, just putting in a couple hours a week for the agency that I used to work for in order to provide support where needed. I also started calling myself an agency owner around this time, but I wasn't. I just thought it sounded cooler. Monetarily, things are going pretty well. In just a couple of months, I went from $8,000 in monthly recurring revenue to about $20,000 in monthly recurring revenue, and I got to sit down with Daryl Rosser to talk about how I did it, and above whatever site I can never remember, there will be a link if you wanted to check that out. Assuming I can actually link to other people's channels and not just my own, definitely know what I'm doing. Towards the end of that interview, Daryl asked me what I was going to do next, and I said that I was going to fire a lot of clients, which I did. Because while things were going well monetarily, not much else was. I wasn't happy with how much I was working, I wasn't happy with the type of work that I was doing, and also wasn't happy with the quality of work that was being produced. Because as revenue was increasing, the quality of work and the results of that work were decreasing, and honestly, I hated myself for it. So to quote Dave Chappelle here, and hopefully this doesn't age poorly, sometimes you do what you think is best whether anybody understands it or not. So within 48 hours of recording that interview, I fired half my clients, and over the next couple of months, several clients also fired me. In November of 2017, I was at $20,000 in monthly recurring revenue, and by February of 2018, I did just over $3,000 in revenue. But what this did is it gave me a soft reset. The fewer clients I had, the more time I had to figure out what was next. Being young, dumb, and full of charisma, disgusting, I decided to give starting an agency a go. By March, I was setting up the company, working on the legal documents, figuring out a rough idea of how we'd structure the services, pricing, and so on. This is how Blue Dog Media was created. The theme for year one of Blue Dog Media was testing. I had some ideas of how we wanted to structure things, but I needed to see how they would play out in practice. At first, we went with the idea of being a niche SEO agency for contractors, which eventually expanded to contractors and law firms because 60% of the client base were law firms, and then that expanded to SEO for service-based businesses. As time went on, I had a good enough grasp on our marketing, sales, our pricing, how we'd structure things, what our deliverables would look like, and so on, that I was able to relatively quickly get close to where I was at in terms of monthly recurring revenue from before, while also needing a much less of my own time in order to maintain that, while still getting results that we were happy with. The big game changer for us was splitting SEO into two separate engagements. The methods and systems I put in place in order to do this are 20% of the reason why I got to speak at one of the Chiang Mai SEO conference events for Matt Diggity. The other 80% was that Matt needed some eye candy on stage. Link above, whatever side, you'll find it if it's there. This process did a lot of things for us. It gave us a unique offer that essentially nullified all the other proposals that prospective clients were getting. And not to say that we were the only company taking this approach, but from the prospective clients that we were getting, none of them had encountered other companies taking the approach that we were. This gave us a near 100% close rate on retainers, while also allowing us to get greater results faster, which of course increased our retention rates and allowed us to charge more at the same time. The main challenge that I faced was how to properly position and pitch our initial offer, since it was so different from what the prospective clients were hearing from everybody else, and I'm not very good at sales. But once that was sorted, we started gaining some real traction. Year 2 was when we really started to take off, in my opinion. Now that the core offers and deliverables were mostly dialed in, the focus for year 2 was on automation and elimination. Elimination was simply about cutting the fat, removing deliverables that we didn't need, making proposals smaller, cutting out tasks that just didn't generate high enough results in comparison to the cost that it takes to implement. Where automation comes in is that, quite simply, it allows us to do more in less time for higher margins. This allowed us to grow both our gross and net profits without the need for VAs, which also allowed us to keep our costs down. Over time, I started to gain more of an interest in Google Ads. It was something that I had played around with before, but it wasn't anything that we were offering as a service. So I did what I always do when I learn something, is I became a sponge that had discovered cocaine, and I just absorbed everything and anything I could get my hands on. As I started to become more comfortable with Google Ads, we started taking on some clients to essentially do what we did in year 1 for SEO, now for Google Ads, testing our marketing, our sales, our pricing, our proposals, our deliverables, and so on. This led to year 3 being heavily focused on PPC, both in scaling it as well as developing our own approach to it. We went from about 20% of our revenue coming in from PPC at the start of year 3 to about 60% of our revenue by the end of year 3. But despite growing both revenue and profits every year, I still wasn't completely happy, and I knew that Blue Dog Media was coming to an end. I started Blue Dog Media on a whim. It was the most natural path forward from an SEO freelancer over to an SEO agency, but I really never put too much thought into it other than what I've already mentioned before. Even the name was a bit of a whim. There's at least 3 other companies called Blue Dog Media, which at times can be very confusing. Simply put, what we do, how we do it, and why we do it have changed a lot. There's never been a real plan for growth, and we never really thought about what building a brand would look like. In my opinion, Blue Dog Media has done its job, and it's time for a fresh start, which is why we're officially rebranding to Comet Fuel. We've actually already been operating as Comet Fuel since Q1 of this year, but now I'm officially announcing it publicly. This is a change that I've slowly been working on since 2019, and a lot of my vision for what I want Comet Fuel to become is going to take time, but I'm really excited to build it. The last several years have been an incredible journey of learning how to run and operate a business, winning and failing, making so many great friends that are in this industry, attending so many events, being able to do things that I never thought that I'd be able to do, but also things that I never thought I'd be cut out to do either. I feel like everything I've done up to this point has been slowly preparing me for this new chapter where I'm able to approach it with a much higher business acumen, finance acumen, marketing acumen, with much greater connections and understanding of what I'm doing. And all in all, I'm excited to see what's next. With that being said, thank you so much for watching, and if you want to stay updated with everything else that I'll be putting out, then feel free to subscribe.